Good morning, everyone. I hope all is well this morning, and thank you so much for being here. It is such a pleasure and opportunity to have just great opportunity to be up in front of each of you and share some common industry knowledge, best practices. I see lots of faces that are familiar out there that I've definitely met, and if I haven't met you before, I certainly look forward to that opportunity. And again, just thank you so much for being here today, knowing full well how long and how far many of you have traveled to be here. I mean, I'm sure there's some of you from Europe, the East Coast, Texas, Hawaii. It's the pinnacle of our show. It's the pinnacle of our business. I mean, I myself drove 6 minutes to get here today. 6 minutes because the traffic was way out of control. You've probably figured I'm a local. My name is Robert Barge. I'm Vice President of Operations for Crescendo Self-Storage, and I am a local to Las Vegas, so welcome to the fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. For those of you that haven't been here, I hope you have a great time and enjoy the show. The presentation today is Magic Revenue Finder, Unlocking Hidden Profit in Your Self-Storage Operation. I also like to word it a little differently. Driving a winning revenue culture. There's some very powerful words in that sentence. Revenue. Who likes revenue? I know I do. It's probably the pretense as to why most of us attend these events. Winning. Who likes to win? I know I certainly like to win. And the most important word of all that you'll probably hear me talk about somewhat even obsessively throughout my presentation for the next 45 minutes or so is the word culture. Driving a winning revenue culture. And the very broad and diverse meaning of the word culture, really defining what that is. How do we find success in our self-storage business in revenue, winning in revenue, and a variety of other metrics and best practices that I'm excited to share with you today by creating a winning culture? Being a servant leader. Serving our staff as opposed to them serving us. Reducing annualized turnover. Empowering our people to be successful and make decisions throughout lots of the different revenue-driving metrics that I'm going to be walking through today. Ironically, one more thing about myself, being a local, I'm on stage right now at this beautiful Mirage, and my beautiful wife, ironically, is also on stage right now, right here on the Las Vegas Strip, where she is the director of weddings at the Bellagio. And she's actually giving a presentation as we speak, so we're simultaneously doing this today. So if any of you feel as though you'd like to make a further contribution to the Barge family household, and you're considering getting married, please consider the Bellagio as your venue, and we'll take good care of you. We love living in Las Vegas. So on to why we're here, Magic Revenue Finder, Unlocking Hidden Profit in Your Self-Storage Operation. Right now, we actually own and operate three going on four beautiful Class A facilities right here in Las Vegas. Historically, kind of a little bit of our background, up until July of 2016, we operated under the business name Life Storage. Many of you might be familiar with that brand. That was us up until 2016, at which point it was actually acquired by a public REIT, Sovereign Acquisitions, now subsequently Life Storage, in July of 2016. I had the tremendous opportunity to meet just a great group of people out of Buffalo, New York, talented and very friendly. And if you want to talk about people who understand culture and understand winning through their people, they were some of the smartest operators that I've ever met. So I had the opportunity to go through that process, that very large acquisition in which 93 of our national self-storage assets were acquired, 84 of which to that public REIT. So again, at the time, we operated under the brand Life Storage. Today, we do business as Shield Storage, with our business kind of being three-faceted: development, acquisitions, and what I'm here to talk about today, sharing some best practices in property management, right? Revenue metrics, revenue driving and driving a successful revenue culture. So as an aggregate, over the course of the last 6, 7, 8 years, we have operated over 100 self-storage facilities nationwide with a very, very heavy concentration right here in my hometown of Las Vegas. We actually have run 20 self-storage locations in just about every angle of Las Vegas you can imagine, and actually going on 21 right now with a very beautiful build-out we have in Southern Highlands. That's a suburb, for those of you familiar with Las Vegas. It's a very, very prestigious area, and we're excited about bringing that new location into our portfolio. So subsequently, most of those across the nation and in Las Vegas have been sold off. But today, again, we have 3 going on 4 operations right here in Las Vegas. And the reason that I emphasize on that is that you'll probably recognize throughout the slides that most of the pictures, or all of the pictures, come from our existing assets here in Las Vegas under our current brand, Shield Storage. So that's just a little bit about our background, and just super glad to be here with you fine folks today. Item number 1, and the reason we're here, going through a variety of slides that are going to walk us through how do we control things like bad debt? How do we drive new ancillary revenue? How do we retain customers? How do we motivate staff? How do we create a winning environment so that our lead conversion is upwards of, not industry average, but maybe closer to 70, 80, 90%? Some of the best practices that we've used in our respective business over the course of 100-plus properties, year over year, market after market after market. And I'll plug a few of those because I'm sure some of you are from these beautiful areas. We've had the pleasure, the distinct pleasure to do business in beautiful areas of this country outside of Las Vegas. Houston, Chicago, a very heavy concentration in Los Angeles, Orlando, Dallas, Sacramento, and to name quite a few others. So we've done the same operating principles that I'll share with you today, we've actually duplicated and scaled with across all of those respective and beautiful markets. So slide number 1 here, as we kind of dig in, is controlling unrentable units. Kind of obvious, right? If we have, for easy math, a self-storage facility that has, let's say, 500 units on the property, and it's 97% occupied, but between unrentable, i.e. broken door, or complementary, employee units, family units, summarized as unrentable. Let's say we have, 15 of those in the property. What does that actually represent? Loss of revenue. And does it represent just loss of revenue and just loss of stabilized NOI? Or does it also, year over year, impact the equitable value of your property? Right? You've got non-rented and non-available square footage on your books. So some of the best practices we put in place with this metric is to really, really keep it down to a minimum. So for example, I spoke of culture a little bit. One of the things we do for our employees is, if they need storage, we typically take care of them. We usually don't impose a fee upon them for that. It's something that we find that if we give to them, what we get back in return is tenfold. Compensation is compensation, but other add-ons such as praise, perhaps helping them out with the storage need, those kinds of things, those are things that in our world we justify. We feel that they're warranted and we're happy to do it. However, we very often take over facilities, usually for third-party management. That's pretty common for us these days. And when we do, one of the first things we flesh out is exactly how many manager units, how many family units, how many broken units are on site, and do an analysis and a pro forma for our respective clients based upon what that looks like. What is the equitable gain in their property if they were to do away with those, if you will, and lease them up, especially when, the markets are hot. I mean, the majority of major MSAs are hot right now with self-storage, and there's a waiting list, arguably, in a lot of different places. So to have the empty storage equals loss of revenue. With that, we need to know why the units are unrentable, right? So documentation purposes. Who on your team is actually taking documented notice of this? Do you yourself or someone else on your team have an initiative that's documented, a structure, if you will, that guides them on when they're going to notate for you, the owner, the regional manager, whatever your respective role may be, what exactly it is that's broken and what the initiative is to fix it? Or is it kind of going without notice? Because going without notice is a loss of revenue. So what I would recommend, and one of our best practices, is tasking someone on your team to get the unit back online. So being in multi-market, multi-unit operations, one best practice we've used, for those of you that fit that mold, is we'll actually assign a manager who's incentivized to own that process, in which they would document very carefully which of the units are unrentable at which facilities, right? So across the entire portfolio, whether you have 2 stores, 1, 15, or 100. Perhaps if you get 100, you might need more than one person. But let's just say it's 15, there's somebody whose job is to do that. And really pay careful attention and roll that structured document, that template, or if you may, whatever it is you choose, however you choose to manage that process, up to you perhaps on a monthly basis, so that you can take a closer analysis to what it is that you're losing, and more importantly, what it is that you could be gaining. Using a budget and timeline. I'm sure that most of us have some kind of budgetary outline at the respective beginning of each year. 2019, I'm sure that many of the faces in here have some kind of goal each month. What we're going to spend, what we're going to fix, how we're going to pay for it, what we're going to make, who we're going to rent to, what our occupancy is going to be like, how we're going to control delinquency, when we're going to auction, and probably 15 other metrics. Things that all of us as operators think about. One thing, if you're not already, that I'd certainly encourage you to incorporate into your annualized budgets is CapEx planning and or a strategy. What is it going to cost me, administrative payroll-wise, construction, repair-wise, whatever that may be, to get my unrentable units back on the market with a closer look at that unit size and the occupancy statistics that show the trailing history of the average length of stay a tenant will stay in that unit size. That right there, my friends, will give you an idea of exactly how much revenue you're losing if you look at the aggregate average stay in, let's say, a 10 by 10 or a 10 by 20. As a close example. You as operators, owners, operators, management, at that point you can make the distinction, do I really want to give this to my next door neighbor for free? And maybe you do. But do I want to give all 5 of them to my next door neighbor for free? Maybe you do. But it's something to consider, and it's something that as we've grown and had 100 plus facilities, I can tell you that from an aggregate sum on a national scale, when this is controlled, the NOI add to your bottom line, specifically from this initiative, significantly grows. Obviously, one facility would be different than 50, but if it's controlled and there's an initiative in place for this, a checklist, if you will, somebody who owns the process, then I guarantee you a greater return on your investment. Increasing occupancy. Well, the bread and butter of our business. Something that's probably very part and parcel to all of us, something we focus on a daily basis, is increasing our unit occupancy. So I have a question. Of all the self-storage owner-operators in here, whose facilities are 100% occupied? Good. Fantastic work. One of the things that we find, and this is probably not that new, but one of the things that we find is that 94, 95, 96% occupancy range is kind of a sweet spot for us. And a lot of analysis that we've done in-house when we were a much larger firm, that we still use those best practices today, have taught us that right around that spot is typically where we aim to be. I'll speak as a former district manager, as I've succession planned my career throughout the industry. As a district manager, historically, let's say I let a couple of my stores in my region, at the time I had Las Vegas, Los Angeles, let's say I had let some of my facilities that have 1,200 units, large facilities, get to 99% occupied, and month over month over month, it just stayed that way. Well, someone would probably be talking to me about that. They want to take a closer look at what I'm doing and I'm paying attention to my in-place revenue management. Right? So what is the market doing? Do we have a sophisticated process on, again, maybe a weekly basis that's assigned to a team member that's going to do a comp survey and kind of see what's going on in the market around me? What are the REITs charging? What are the regional players charging? What are the locals charging? How are they advertising? What kind of concessions do they have in place? And a system in place so that on a weekly basis, at a minimum, I would say at a minimum, we actually kind of usually do it more often than a weekly basis, but at a minimum on a weekly basis, there is a structured hour or two of time where you're actually looking and surveying, is my pricing in the right spot? Is my pricing in the right spot in order to grow occupancy, or is my occupancy at 88% and my underwriting says I need to be at 93? Am I too aggressive? Right? One of the things that I've found in some of our careful analysis, this is dating back to 2000, maybe 13 and 14, is that the consumer in storage, as we all know, is somewhat different than, for example, a retail or a restaurant consumer. Now they're the same because the restaurant consumer stores, the retail consumer uses storage, so there's a likelihood. But at the same time, if you have a Class A institutional quality facility with elaborate landscaping, all the bells and whistles, the alarm doors that roll up, all the extra things that get baked in and are extra operating costs, repair and maintenance costs, all these beautiful things, the best gates, the best LED lighting, and your immediately adjacent competitor is maybe a B facility, a really nice manager that greets people. They answer the phone timely. If they have a call center, they respond immediately. They've been trained in the art of customer service, and their facility is clean. Maybe not as pretty, but clean. It's not a dump. We have found through our analysis over and over and over again that that Class A facility, a quarter mile away from that B facility, can get the same rate per square foot, and the same customer will store at either one. It is viable. So increasing occupancy has much to do with so many different factors. If you're 94, 95, 96% occupied, what we find in that space is that we have the opportunity to not just reach out into the market to acquire new customer market share, but yet to in-reach our current customer base and really do a closer analysis on what they're paying. Is it under standard? Or is it over standard moderately? Let's say 10% over standard rate against all your competitors, and your operating software set with pricing. But they're in a 10 by 10, and you have a waiting list for 10 by 10s. Is 10% over market good enough? Or would you be better suited to perhaps push another increase through? Go another 10%. And if 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people move out, you're not vacant for more than a week if the demand is high enough. And the next person coming in is then viably paying a higher rate, right? That little incremental growth steps year over year as a best practice, facility over facility, as an aggregate sum, truly does add up on your bottom line. The same way that I was talking about with the unrentable units, it's kind of paying attention to detail. Paying attention to detail, and most importantly, paying attention to the people who are direct reporting to you that are interfacing with your customers. We all know that can lead to be a disaster. Why did I get this rent increase? Well, because corporate said so, right? That doesn't necessarily go over very well. So empowering and working with and making ourselves available to our frontline staff and continuously culturally developing them and succession planning them so that they're in a position to be successful, they're in a position to do the right thing when they're not being supervised. This is a job with a lot of autonomy, speaking in regards to the store manager on site. Making sure that they're going to, what I call, run the play. If they're going to run the play when no one's watching, when they know they're not on a recorded phone call. These are all some best practices, although incremental, if you take some of these into consideration and even just measure it throughout the rest of 2019, should you choose to do so. If you're not doing some of these things and you implement them, I would almost guarantee you will see some incremental growth, if not a big step in growth. And doing it in such a way that you're able to embrace your employees and create an even better work atmosphere for them. Increasing rent collected per occupied square foot. We have a finite amount of space in our self-storage facilities, whether you have 150 units, whether or not you have 1,000 units. To increase revenue over time, you need to increase revenue per square foot. So what does that mean? That's, again, probably the obvious to all of us who are operators. What are we charging to acquire the new customer? How are we attracting them? If I'm charging $100 a month for a 10 by 10, and one of my competitors is charging $100 a month for a 10 by 10, and I'm doing a 1 month 50% off special, and they're doing a no admin fee 3 month 50% off special, what's the odds that I'm going to get the lead versus them? Very slim. But if we don't know what our competitors are doing, then there's no way for us to effectively compete. So that's acquiring the new customer. When it comes to the existing customers, that's where, as we all know, it gets a little bit sticky. You've got a customer who's been there for 5, 10, 15 years. You know, perhaps they're $5, $20, $50, $100 under standard rate. And you have that times 50 units with just historical rents like there. It can be a bit of a challenge, and I could say even almost a bit of an emotional challenge, when you're looking at processing rent increases and sending out 30-day addendums, if you will, to their lease, and stating that, well, I'm sorry, due to market demand, we're actually going to be moving you up in a very well-tailored letter, moving you up to the standard rate of the property now. Tenant then comes in and is, obviously unhappy about this. I'm sure that we've all experienced this. For those of you who've rolled out rental rate increases, it's not something that's particularly palatable by the customers out in society. I mean, when you rent a car and it says it's going to be $80 online, and then you show up to rent the car and there's this fee and that fee and that fee and that fee, and now it's $123 to rent the car. I mean, yeah, you could have read the small print, but you can still see people online get upset about it. And I think in storage, it's part and parcel of our business. It's real estate, right? It's supply and demand. One thing that I trained my staff on is my district managers is to really coach the frontline staff on how to make it kind of a like scenario comparison. So for example, how many of us have lived in apartment complexes before? Yeah, me too. And over the course of the first year, the lease starts to come to an end. And you don't want to move. Now you're on month 11 of your 12-month lease. And you go to the rental office and say, I'd like to stay. And they go, gosh, Robert, we'd love to have you stay too. When you moved in, we had like 15 available units. Now we have a waiting list. We'd love to have you stay, but your rent, instead of $1,000, is going to be $1,450. But we'd love to have you stay. Who's gone through things like that before in their life? Right? I'm just sharing it as a best practice because it's a common thing that most people, most consumers who store at some point in their life, the majority, trust me, have had an apartment experience. And they come into one of the things that I've noticed is they come into our facilities or call into our facilities, and if you're not in storage, they don't really resonate, or they don't really realize that this is a commercial real estate business. Right? I know we all do, but the average consumer sometimes doesn't really think of it that way. They just kind of think of it as you're gouging me, right? And rightfully so. I get it. I understand. I don't like when it happens to me when I get increases. I get increases on my insurance premiums and everything all the time, right? I mean, it's just part and parcel of living and having a business. So what I arm my staff with is some examples like that where they can express empathy and walk through some situational role play very quickly with a customer on what they've done and what they've experienced in their respective life when they've experienced a rent increase. When they lived in an apartment and there was more rent imposed upon them in order to stay, right? And then relating that to the customer who's on a month-to-month lease who just received a $20 a month rental rate increase. It's a supply and demand factor. I've been through it too. Gosh, I felt so frustrated when I re-signed my new apartment lease. I absolutely understand what you're saying, but I'm so thankful for your business and the opportunity to have you here. Is there anything else I can do for you to make your storage experience just a little bit better? And really expressing empathy and lots of role play on simple things that some of us may consider simple. Standing when the customer enters the office rather than sitting. Eye contact. Treating that customer as if they are the most important human being on earth for that minute you're going to be talking to them. Treating storage as a service and not as a necessity. Not as something that you have to have because I see you have a 30-foot U-Haul out there. Looks like it'd be probably difficult for you to move. So that's the rate increase and that's the way it's going to be. That's not customer service. That's not selling. That's forcing. Right? Engaging our customers and creating a cultural atmosphere for our staff as well as for our customers in so many ways you will see move the needle. If you're not embracing that, it's something that I strongly encourage that you do. Because when your team and the people who are interfacing with your customers, they're on the phone with your customers, when they're bought in, you'll move the needle. You'll be able to raise rents more effectively with less customer attrition. And I know I keep kind of taking our content back into culture of management, but it is so important, and you probably can see that I'm very passionate about it. I like the idea that our annualized turnover is almost none, and that after our acquisition of Life Storage, when we came to become Shield Storage, every single one of our direct reports wanted to come back to work for us, even if it was a year and a half later. And they do. And they do. So increasing rent collected per occupied square foot. We have a finite amount of space, focusing on a sophisticated method and summary of what are we doing to pay attention to what the market is demanding per the unit size. Are we looking at just the aggregate sum of occupancy for our property? Or are we getting more specific and analytical and breaking it down to saying 10 by 10s, 10 by 15s, 10 by 20s? What is the unit occupancy just in that given particular size? Not just the whole sum of the property, but really looking at the unit size and the demand in the market. Your competitor survey, which I would probably recommend in most markets, to be about a 5-mile geographic radius when it comes to roll-up door parking, roll-up door storage. When it comes to parking, a best practice that I would share with you is to expand that radius out upwards to 8 to 12 miles is something that we've measured and been very successful with. Now, why? As we're talking about rent collected per occupied square foot, that does indicate, an element of that indicates rental rate increases. How easy is it to move a 3,000 square foot house full of furniture out of a 10 by 30 versus just absorb a $20 increase in a nice way? Versus how hard is it, how difficult is it to move an RV or to pull a boat out of a recreational vehicle parking space? Bye. Competitor number 3, 2.5 miles away, just gave me 3 months 50% off, and even after the concession burns off, it's still $25 cheaper than your parking space. Now you got an open space. Now you got to fill it. Can you fill it based upon your asking rates? Can you fill it with more rent than the person that just left, or did you just chase away a good customer? How long is it going to be empty? By the time you fill it, what kind of advertising vehicles did we use? I'll just use a couple that we standardize with. Sparefoot. We find it to be very effective as an advertising vehicle, but there are fees attributed to that, and rightfully so. But to the operator, there's an empty space for said amount of days. There's a new tenant that moves in that viably could be paying less than the one who just moved out. And there's advertising costs that go into acquiring that customer. So what I would strongly kind of consider is that everybody, if you're not doing it already, really try to put some focus and analysis, really some weekly deep dive, focus, concentrated time into your competition analysis and how it pertains to how you are going to acquire your next customer against how your competitor is going to do it. Be very, very aware, because I'll tell you, from a 100-store location, national scale, there are times that I've found, wow, we need to be looking every day. Some of these regional and national operators move their rates daily. And by the time you look at it 4, 5, 6 days, a month later, you have lost 19 move-in opportunities. I'm speaking real numbers, learning from the School of Hard Knocks. So really, really pay attention to that and put some analysis and programming into your system to where someone on your team, if not yourself, is surveying the comps and seeing what exactly is available to you and how you're going to compete in order to hit that sweet spot, that 95, 96% occupancy range, and hold firm there, achieving more rent per square foot than your competitors around you. A lot of careful analysis and kind of tiptoe work goes into that process. Increasing units covered by the protection plan. How many in here use an add-on warranty protection plan and/or insurance product at your storage facility? Okay, roughly about 15, 20% of the room. How many are considering doing that? Okay, about 10% of the room. Now, I'm not sure how well you're able to see these charts I put here, so I actually added them on the slides as well. I want to share with you something that's a common practice of ours. It's something that we've kind of standardized, if you will, across the 100-plus stores that we've operated over the last subsequent years. I'm going to share with you a store that we have acquired just recently in February of 2018. So it has now been a respective, basically 14 months since we've had this facility right here in Las Vegas, literally 6 miles away. Shield Storage, our new brand, Las Vegas. This one is Shield Storage of West Craig Road. It's about a 550,000 square foot facility, about closer to 70,000 net rentable square feet. Upon acquisition of this facility, you can see on the charts here that the protection plans in place in February of 2018 were 0. 5 months later, in July of 2018, we had a 430 unit penetration on that property. In 5 months of diligence, analytical work, focus, and determination to get there. This next slide will show you a different range. Instead, it shows that same outcome in revenue. Revenue from plans in February 2018, the date of the month of the acquisition, $0 coming into the facility, which what we see, and is arguably across the industry, the second largest recurring revenue driver behind rent, right? Rent is the base, right? That's our base. But how do we add not just ancillaries like locks and things like that we'll get to, but how do we add the recurring revenue, the stuff that's going to come in every month along with that rent, and reduce liability on your facility, and arguably even increase customer gratification on your facility, in which I'll go into as well. $0 in February 2018, right here in Las Vegas. 5 months later, July of 2018, currently we're making about $9,000 a month, which represents about an 8% to 8.5% to 9% NOI add at the end of each month. Straight cash and straight protection for our tenants. Now, what do I mean by that? We're selling a protection plan, so obviously that's selling something. That's engaging a customer, and that's selling them something that in some cases they say, you know, I don't think I need that. But I'll tell you this, having run myself personally, having run over 40 of our facilities, when you have that many in as many markets as I've operated in, there are unfortunate circumstances, and I'm sure everyone has been through this. There's break-in activity. There's rodent activity. Usually not because the operator's irresponsible. It's because somebody stored dog food and they weren't supposed to, right? Somebody goes through a nasty divorce and the lease is in the former spouse's name and the other spouse breaks into the unit to get their stuff out because they've been paying the rent and they're entitled to it. And on. And then random break-in activity. Things that just happen in our respective business. It's unfortunate, and we do the best we can as operators to prevent it, but these are things that we have to deal with as a reality. And I'll speak for myself here. Although we do attach these to rents, and sometimes customers go, gosh, there's another extra fee. 40 some odd facilities, years and years of this, I don't know, 50, 100 times that I've had to process a claim. I'll tell you what, that customer goes, boy, am I glad I have that protection plan. I've never had one say, gosh, I really regret buying that. When they feel like, man, my couch is ruined. And all of a sudden, within 2 weeks, some very liberal $2,000 check gets in their hand, or $3,000 check, or $5,000 check, without a depreciation process, without a deep dive into where they bought it, and receipts, and tons of pictures. You know, a police report suffices, what they listed in their unit when they moved in, some basic pictures, and great customer service based upon giving back what we're getting. It goes back to taking care of the manager, taking care of the customer. So yes, we're here to talk about revenue. Is it a great add-on revenue driver? You bet it is. Absolutely it is. You do that across 15 stores, you notice a real difference. But at the same time, it is a benefit to the customer when something happens, and perhaps in some cases, just a few things I've seen, the customer perhaps didn't underwrite their storage unit into their homeowner's insurance policy, for an example. And the amount they want to claim is about the same as their deductible. And they're just so angry. And who do they come back to complain? Us. Right? This happened because of your facility. What they don't really realize, in many cases, is that although they were violated, so were we. They don't know about the thousands of dollars we have to spend in order to fix all the gates and the windows and the barbed wire and all the things that they broke to get in there to get to their unit, not to mention our unit door that has to be replaced. But the customer doesn't want to hear that. What they do want to know is that they have protection. And they're not going to go through a massive headache. 2 weeks, they're going to get a check. Does it fix the world when they lost sentimental valuable items? No. Does it bring some retribution to them to say, gosh, you know, I was really well taken care of. They sold me this thing and told me I'd be protected, and when something happened, I was. And that, my friends, that is where this comes in. So there is revenue. Obviously, it's a revenue driver. That's a big piece. But there's also customer satisfaction and protection. Protection, as we sell it, is not just some word just to make them buy something. It is a commitment. It is a commitment from the operator to the customer that we will take care of them in their time of need. They will get an immediate return phone call. Even if it's escalated to me, operating 20 or 30 properties, I will return that phone call. even if there's 15 of them in an unfortunate circumstance. I will handhold getting this done for them. So yes, is adding $9,000 a month? I mean, let's do the math on that over the course of a year, 2 years, 3 years. Look at your, what does that do to the value of the property, right? I mean, on top of the cash flow. It's pretty significant. It's pretty significant. If you choose to sell one day, you're pretty well optimized. At the same time, the other win, the secondary win, is that we are able to take care of customers as opposed to something detrimental happening to their personal belongings, and then they're coming to you seeking some kind of monetary gain or monetary retribution of some kind. It puts you in a position to be a winner in both categories, revenue and customer service. Each of our facilities, this is not just one unique one, each of our facilities, arguably just about all 100, maybe not quite here, but our average penetration is around 75 to 80% per property on the protection plan. So it's significantly larger than industry average. It's something we're very proud of, and equally very proud of, not only from a revenue standpoint, but again, I emphasize, very proud of the fact that we're able to take care of our customers in their time of need, that they actually have something that will help them in a circumstance where they need help. We've had people that have gone through unfortunate circumstances, break-ins, what have you, whatever it may be, something that caused their items to be damaged. They've been taken care of, and we have this measured. I'm happy to share it with any of you. And that customer needs storage again a year later, and they come back to us. The same facility where they lost their stuff last time, because we were so diligent about helping them through this process. That just goes to show you that something really negative can happen at your property, and you can still retain that customer. They could leave you a nasty 5-star review, a nasty 1-star review, and a year later still decide to come back because of how well that your staff and or yourself engaged them and took care of their needs. Increasing late fees. Late fees are revenue. Some of the best practices that we've used across our portfolios is benchmarking against public company operators. So what does that mean? Looking at kind of like the big five: Life Storage, Public Storage, Extra Space, CubeSmart, and so on. Their leases per state are pretty well tailored. So maybe if you're more comfortable checking with your attorney or more comfortable just kind of benchmarking against what some of the public operators that are very sophisticated and successful are doing, you're able to see are you optimizing your late fee process? Are you allowing your staff administrative access into your operating software to kind of just liberally waive late fees as they see fit? When's the last time that you pulled your ledger history and looked back over the course of 2018 and did an aggregate sum of how many late fees were actually waived? And then go deeper. How many were waived 3 times, 5 times, 8 times, 12 times for the same customer? The next step is to figure out how much money would we have made this last year had we had tighter controls around that initiative. Tighter controls in our space basically just means a district manager approval process. Or what we have is called lead store managers that are given administrative access to help. But there's a tier or let's say an authorization or approval process, whether it's directly to the owner if you're a single unit operator, or whether or not you have a regional manager in place because you have 10, 12, 15, 20 facilities. Whatever that may be and however you're most comfortable, what I would strongly recommend is that as it pertains to late fees, and that's not just the initial late fee. We're all familiar with the pre-lien fee, the lien fee, right? All kind of the late fees summarized that come into play. It's easy to waive one and sometimes necessary and warranted. I certainly waive for customers. If I have a great customer that's been there for 3 or 4 years and they go through a hard time, sure, I waive their fees, absolutely. It goes back to that balance of customer service and culture. I'm not interested in seeing them leave over something like that. I certainly don't want to push their business away. But there is a sophisticated chain of approvals that goes into it that even psychologically tells the customer, I can't just come in and do this every month. There's a process. The well-trained manager here says, we'd love to take care of you, Mr. Jones. Let me go ahead and take note of this, and I'm going to process what we call a lead store manager request. Within 24 hours, I'll be able to let you know if I can waive this late fee for you. For right now, let me go ahead and take the payment, and we'll get you taken care of. I promise I'll be back in touch. And then diligently does. Mr. Johnson, we're going to waive this for you just this one time, but moving forward, it is important you understand that we won't be able to waive a late fee again. Is this an okay due date for you? I know some of us are first of the month, some of us are anniversary date. Assuming your anniversary date, you have the opportunity to move their due date. There's lots of different things that you can do to try to appease customer service, yet reduce the late fee waivers. Again, look, someone who looks at 40, 50, 60 P&Ls, as an aggregate average across the country, and I'm looking at that total aggregate bottom line and seeing, and in some cases, tens of thousands of dollars in late fees waived, which then warrants a deeper analysis audit. And then you start looking into all the things that are really being waived across the board. Hence the decision to, let's remove administrative access from the frontline store, so they can't do that and they need to ask permission and roll out a new standard operating procedure in which they're going to be trained on and follow. The next year, it's down to a very controllable number, not impacting our net operating income to a very, very, very slim degree. Our occupancies are still the same. Our online reviews are still mostly in the 5-star range because the staff has been supported to be successful and the systems are in place to be successful. So in summary, increasing late fees and just carefully considering the circumstances under which you will allow, as an owner, operator, manager, late fees to be waived. It goes back to kind of just the awareness factor. If you check on a monthly basis and you realize, wow, $3,000 in credits and another $2,000 in late fees waived, well, that just significantly impacted the month. But is the manager at fault if they haven't been trained? If they don't have clear and defined, written, guided expectations? At that point, I would probably turn the blame on myself and say, I have not put this manager in a position to be successful. And this person is probably, facing fire several times a day and just tried to do the best they could and appease the customer. It's up to me, the leader, to serve the employee, to make sure that they can be successful in this space. Next item is increasing administrative fees. How many of us charge an admin fee to move into your facility? Okay, good, almost all of us. How many, in lieu of an admin fee, charge a security deposit? Okay, a couple of folks there too. Both are a good avenue to go. They both have pros and cons. What we standardize with is an admin fee. Similar to what I was talking about before, we'll survey the competition. Are they charging $15? In some of our markets, yes. 20, 25, that's right about the average. And we'll implement that process in place. Now, back to controlling what can be waived and what can't. Let's say we have a lower than desired occupancy on 10 by 20s for easy math. There might be specifically for that unit size at that specific store an initiative that says, even though the admin fee is advertised at $25, in order to convert leads and gain that recurring revenue, right? Because an admin fee is one time. It's $25 one time, not $25 every month. I want something that's $25 every month. In order to secure that customer in a competitive market, is that something that you could maybe give your store staff some leeway to work with? Well, gosh, the other guy, they're going to let me move in. They don't have one of those admin fees. You know what? We have a beautiful facility with really wonderful gates. I really think you'll like our security cameras, and I would just be so delighted to have you as a customer. Why don't I go ahead and waive that admin fee for you, just for coming down and taking a look and see if we can take care of you. Giving them or not giving them the opportunity to use that as leverage to get the customer in the door, right? And then in turn helps to convert the protection plan, right? Even if you're giving them 50% off the first month. You fast forward a very quick 30, 60 days later, those concessions are burned off. They're paying a healthy rent. They're paying that protection plan. They are covered if something happens to them, and you are making more money. And your staff felt empowered to make decisions to be successful. They felt as though you trusted them. Parameters, but controlled parameters. Administrative fees are revenue. So again, in our portfolio, dating back to Life Storage, currently Shield Storage, that's why we charge the admin fee. We budget for that each year. We do find that it has some a viable cause to our net income growth. Again, second thing here is benchmarking against public company competitors. In your market, what are they charging for this? And I'll tell you right now, they're charging admin fees and typically not security deposits. Security deposits are a liability. They sit on your books. It's something that you're going to have to refund later. And it doesn't offset the administrative time. If it's a really quality self-storage sale, it doesn't offset the administrative time that your valued team member is going to sit there for 20 or 30 minutes, tour the property, and execute the lease. There's payroll involved in that. that we'd like to offset, moving the needle in every angle, being very analytical and dialed into details of our business. That $25 or $20 admin fee easily starts to offset a good percentage of what it's going to cost for you to have that employee payroll-wise execute that lease. So now the customer's having a phenomenal conversation. Your staff is well trained. They're moving in. They're happy about their unit. It's clean, all the things we know. But you as the owner-operator are offsetting some of the cost and payroll and the admin time that it takes for your staff to actually do the move-in. And it's relatively standardized across the industry. So you're not like the odd duck. You're not like the one person out there saying, we charge this extra thing. You're one of 90 some odd % of people doing it. So it's really not that shocking to the customer either. But again, what I'd recommend is giving your staff, if you're looking to fill unit occupancy in a specific unit size, maybe even incentivizing your staff somehow. Maybe even incentivizing your staff somehow to be able to use that $25 admin fee in lieu of converting, for example, the protection plan, focusing on the recurring revenue lines. Increasing ancillary income is the obvious: cell tower, merchandise, truck rentals. I won't get too far into this, and I know my time is about up. So these are things that, if you want to take a quick look, these are things that we also keep in place and continue to show us year-over-year growth. One thing that I'd recommend that I will point out on this is lock cut fees and cleaning fees. That goes back to the admin fee, right? There are fees and payroll attributed to the owner, material costs for someone to cut locks, the liability for the training that you've had to put your staff through to learn how to cut locks safely, per OSHA standards or what have you. A cleaning fee, somebody leaves junk and a bunch of garbage and a couch on the property. Well, there's costs to take that to the dump, right? Implementing a cleaning fee for that and having it clearly stipulated in your lease. These are all things that will help to save you money and move the needle incrementally. Decreasing late fee waivers and decreasing move-in promotions. I know that we've touched on that quite a bit, and kind of pertains to the availability of the market. High demand plus limited availability equals opportunity. So in summary, because I know my time's about up, moving the needle, that's the goal. Year over year, really looking to move the needle and get yourself into a better customer service position, threefold, revenue position, and staff empowerment decision. Thank you very much, everybody, today. I think my time has been exhausted, but I really appreciate your engagement.